So she becomes the assassin to the very thing that I was created for.
So good. Yeah.
And so that creates, honestly, that creates so much conflict and so much confusion that the very reason you were getting together because you love that person, suddenly that person becomes someone that you hate because you continue, instead of dreaming with them, you're having nightmares.
You are here. Welcome to the Purpose Finder podcast. This is the show where we uncover why you are truly here, and more importantly, how to make it your reality. My father, the late Dr. Miles Monroe, said the greatest tragedy in life is not death, but life without purpose. And research further shows that people with a strong sense of purpose are 2.4 times more likely to feel fulfilled. Each week, I sit down with extraordinary guests, entrepreneurs, artists, thought leaders who are boldly living their why. We dive deep into their journeys, the struggles they have overcome, their breakthroughs, and the lessons that can help you do the same. I am your beautiful host, Charisa Munroe-Wilborn, and we're about to explore the mindsets, tools, and strategies to help you live a life with purpose, passion, and legacy. Are you ready? Let's go and dive into the episode. And we are back for another amazing episode of the Purpose Finder podcast, where our mission is simple: to inspire you to find and uncover your life's purpose and to live a life overflowing with meaning, fulfillment, and significance. Why? Because deep down, we are all craving belonging. No one wants to feel unfulfilled, and we are all searching, asking the big question: why in the world am I here? Well, I hope you allow your search to end right here on the Purpose Finder podcast. I am your host, Charisa Munroe-Wilborn, and today I have the great honor and privilege of sitting with two amazing people, very close and dear to my heart for all sorts of reasons. They don't only talk about purpose, they don't only walking it, but they're actually living out their life boldly together and as individuals. We're going to dive deep into their story, their journey, and some of the lessons along the way to where they are right now. Help me welcome Terrance and Bethsaida Wallace. Terrance is the founder of InZone, CEO of Scan One. We'll learn more about those later. And his beautiful, amazing, fantastic wife, Bethsaida, who is a beacon of light all by herself. My beautiful friends, it is so good to have you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for saying yes.
Thank you.
They are also, and I will share this, they are also the amazing godparents to my daughter, to my children. So we have one on the way. So I am excited to have them share this platform with me and also share them with you, because I'm really private with my inner circle. But I thought that together they have a great story. They have a great mission and a great purpose that they're walking out. And so I wanted them to share with the world who they are, but also where they came from, so that as you see yourself in them, you can say, if they did it, so can I. My friends, welcome. I'm not going to read a bio. This is your opportunity to shine. Let us know who you are as individuals, what you do, where you came from, and all that amazing stuff.
Awesome.
You go first, Liz.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This is an honor to be able to share our story here, so everyone could just be motivated and continue on their walk with their purpose, right? So a little bit about myself. I come from a large family. My parents had 8 children, very humbly beginnings, where I learned so much. What is it to have nothing to where I'm at today, and I give God glory for that. My mom taught me so many great qualities as a woman, to continue being humble, and the strength and the courage that she had definitely rolled over to me. Currently, I am a special education classroom assistant teacher. I've been doing it for 10 years, and my journey to getting where I'm at today, it was almost like a roller coaster of events, but I just thank God that I have been able to work with students with different disabilities during this 10 years of working at a school. And just looking back at what I have gone through and the journey, I know that I am now aligned to what God had created me for. And where I'm at now, married, and I just thank God through the journey of it all. I went through a divorce where God, from that struggle, that period of my life, I had a moment where God had to help me redefine who I was. It was a struggle to refocus on my purpose and things like that. But I just thank God that through his faithfulness, I was able to get back on my feet and continue walking in my purpose. And I just thank God for that. Amen.
Amazing, amazing. She's doing awesome things with her husband as an individual. I love pulling on her. I love stretching her. I love being around Bethsaida. She truly has been through some things in life, but she is beautiful for it. She is stronger for it. She has an amazing daughter. She hasn't mentioned her, but it's wonderful to see a wife and a mother who even haven't gone through the divorce as you have, Bethsaida, still able to come out just as beautiful and as humble as you are, and then find this joy. Who we're gonna talk about all of that in a minute. But Terrance, please tell us all the things you are in life, but also who you are, where you came from.
Definitely. Well, it's a pleasure to be with you all on this podcast. Obviously, purpose is a big part of my becoming and my fight within. I am an only child to a single a mom who was a single mom all of my life, and she was the sibling of 14 others, brothers and sisters. So a large family from that perspective, but mom only had one. And so having that growing up in poverty on the west side of Chicago in the Austin community, which is one of the largest communities in the city of Chicago, and was definitely crime, drugs, you name it, was in our community. But my mom was very instrumental in my life, putting me in the right school districts, moving me around, and making sure that I was engaged in extracurricular activities that would prevent me from kind of taking up some of the statistics that were happening in our community. And as a result, she put me in a school called Dirkskin Elementary School, which is near O'Hare Airport in Chicago. And at that school, I learned the gift of diversity and valued that gift of diversity. And while at the same time being confident as a young Black boy in a classroom where there were multiple other ethnic groups. That prepared me later on in life. My mom raised me in the church. So Jesus was a part of my life at a very early age. I was baptized at 7 years old. And that really, honestly, those were the guardrails that any parent who is doing the thing called parenting by yourself. And if you have a mother and father in the house, is to raise your kid in the fear of the Lord. And that's what my mom did, because let me tell you, when mom couldn't be around 24/7, she worked 2 and 3 jobs to take care of me. Not that I was a kid that needed a lot, but I definitely wanted the things that were very, very expensive. And mom did all of those things other than pay for expensive pair of gym shoes. So I had to get a job at the age of 13 years old. And I worked my way up and learned to engage in managing money and really carrying an entrepreneur spirit. So that's my dreams and aspirations came from God calling me to do something different. And so now that led me to going to New Zealand, spending just purely hearing the voice of God and going over to a country where I had no other connections, didn't really know anybody, and just purely off of the voice of God leading and guiding me. And what I say now, he downloaded a blueprint from heaven, and that was the End Zone Project. And so there I created what's called the End Zone Education Foundation in New Zealand, which led me today to be the legal guardian of over 200 kids, right? And so kids who did not have access to quality education, safe community, or resources, or even networks. And for those of you that may listen to this podcast and realize that, I have a dream, I believe I have purpose, and I just don't know how it's going to happen. Well, it happens when we submit our lives to the Lord and he guides us and leads us in the way of that. For me, it was relocating me geographically into another country where, in my own country, back in those days, Black men were not popular amongst some of our coexisters in America. But when I got to another country, God began to speak and I began to take steps of faith, and that led to the End Zone Education Foundation. And I will tell you this, that learning a language of another country and experiencing life in a way that I did not know when my mom sent me to the school at a young age outside of my community, how that was going to have impact in my adulthood. So the decisions that we make now with our kids, it is very imperative that you are not only discerning the future of your kids, but that you are very strategic in how you make those approaches or engaging them in activities or schools, or even just like who are their friend groups, right? And so my mom did a very good job of doing that early on. And so it landed me in New Zealand, where I started the End Zone Education Foundation. And after that, I created what's called Scan One Limited. So that's Scan One biometric facial recognition technology. Back then, when I first created it, was finger scanning, so access control. And that became sort of my social enterprise to build out what God was calling me for. So fulfilling that purpose and realizing that God is a big God, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes we put limits on God, or we are slowful about doing the things that God has called us to do. But for me, I felt like at a young age, I didn't know if I was going to survive being a teenager, making it to 21 based on the crime that was happening in our community. However, God allowed me to see those milestones. And because of that, I felt like, man, I owe it to God, to the life that he's given me, to be the very best or do whatever he's kind of instructed or given me the ability to do. And so Scan One grew 9 years ago now, will be 10 years in March. And last year was blessed to bring it into the U.S. market, where I found out that I'm the only African-American with majority shareholding in biometric facial recognition technology, which now has provided pathways for us to create generational wealth. And so we are on that journey now. Hear me, making money and having opportunities to make money is good, but we must never forget the purpose of why God created us. And I always say, when purpose, timing, and season meets, it births destiny. Mm-hmm. And I think that we've had a special encounter. My wife.
Ooh, that's good. Hold on. Don't go too fast. Wait, say that again. Like I say, for those in the back, when purpose,
timing,
time,
and
season meet,
it births destiny.
They produce.
Yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely. And so
amazing.
in that journey, I met my wife, and like her, I was previously married, and won't throw salt on that relationship, but clearly it was not the relationship God had for me. And so later on in life, after starting the End Zone Project in America, I was what will be called a single father, taking care of boys from the inner city of Chicago in the northwest suburbs. And as God would have it, I'm one of the co-founders of New Life Covenant Southeast Church in Chicago. And I was over the West Side location, so the satellite location. And my wife, I guess, heard my testimony one day, and then we became acquainted later on that year. And then, courted for a while. And I'll say this, because purpose, when God gives us purpose, which he gives all of us purpose, right? God is intentional. And so even in relationship of finding my partner to carry out God's assignment for my life, we studied a book called Kingdom Relationships, because it has to be more to a relationship in a marriage than you look beautiful and she does, and that I look good or maybe not. So it has to be more than that, because as we age, those looks go away in some cases, right? And so what's the purpose of that relationship, and why did God bring us together? And we have to know what that is, because if we don't know what it is, when times get hard and the lovey-doveys fall out the way, what are we standing on? And for us, we stand on the promise that we know why God created us as a couple and why he allowed us the favor that he's given us. And so we got married on the March 27th, 2021, in the midst of COVID, right? So we're one of the people that had a COVID wedding, which is good because sometimes you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in some cases for a wedding to invite people that you will never, ever see again or probably even talk to again after you're married, because marriage takes on a new kind of direction. And for me, I was very intentional and purposeful. So was my love, that I knew after being through that one time that I was not planning to go and enter a marriage to divorce again, but it had to be something deeper than just us being attracted to one another. There had to be a purpose behind it. And because of that, we got married, purchased a house in the Northwest suburbs that really had a lot of people's head turned. But it was not for us. It was for the young men now. We've taken legal guardianship of 10 Black and brown boys from the inner cities of Chicago, the west and south sides of Chicago. And then we have a daughter. So we have 10 boys, 1 girl that in our house. And we're preparing to take in another 5. And so in putting tiny homes, we have 13 acres of land, putting tiny homes on one part for our kids that are in university that return homes through different times of the year. And so that's just a little bit about me. I know I did a whole sermon, but that's me.
No, it's good to hear. And I want to hear it because I'm listening, especially now, to all of the mountaintops where you are together. With Scan One, with the In Zone Project, with just your marriage, like you're not at the most apex, but you're at one of the apex of and seasons of your life where you're doing exceptionally well. But I want to talk about as we transition out of the month of love, I kind of want to talk about that marriage, talk about your marriage, talk about transitioning from a divorcee to now a new husband and a new wife to a new person, and how that has played a part in the purpose that you still had for your life before meeting each other. And then also, Pastor Terrance, like you mentioned, getting married for a purpose. And so you were very intentional. I learned something, very new about the two of you a couple of days ago, but I want to talk about it. You were so intentional about your marriage being, purpose-led, that you wanted to make sure it wasn't about just that she was beautiful or that he was handsome and they had the right body, and no, it was deeper than that. And so during the courting days, you had shared with my husband and I lately that during that marriage, there was no physical anything. And we talking, I'm sorry, during your courting period, your dating period, there was no kissing, there was nothing. And I'm like, man, I don't know. I mean, to be honest, I don't know if I could do it. My husband and I dated, and, we stole a kiss or 2 or 3 or 10. We sure did. But, here you are, 2 grown adults married before, and you meet each other and you decide, we're not going to do this. Now, I'm curious as to whose decision that was, and then it was followed by the other person, or was it something that you guys decided together? Was it easy to uphold to that value and moral standards at the time? Was it challenging? Share.
So it would definitely be my leading in that, because and that was actually part of the process, because the fact that I could lead her in a courting period let me know that I could lead her as a wife. And so she followed my lead in that, and respected my sort of the boundaries that was put in place. But she did remind me that day when you guys found out, the path that we had taken, that I did sneak a kiss on 1/4 of, I don't know, maybe it was a holiday or something.
Yes, I think it was.
I actually didn't remember that. But I'm very aware. And so for anyone who's gone through a divorce or a very serious relationship and had a breakup, Well, there's trauma that comes from that. And so I went through divorce care classes
Absolutely.
after my divorce, and learned not only things about the marriage that I was in, but also learned things about myself. And one of the things that you carry from a divorce when you are a believer is you carry that guilt of like, man, I can't believe now I have this attached to my name. And because I understood what God had called me to do, I had to be intentional and make better decisions on those relationships that I would entertain. And so when my love came along, I was very, very intentional about that. Because I mean, sometimes in relationships, when you're dating, there are things that I would say the enemy uses, but they're not bad things, right? But the enemy uses them. They become bad because you become attracted to something that is cosmetic, for instance, that is not really, it's not anything that has substance enough to sustain a relationship long term. And when you do that, then what happens is that your body betrayed you, your emotions betrayed you, and you find yourself releasing your heart to something that is fictitious. And when marriage is really lifing, and you're going to need something a lot more solid to stand on for you to endure those period of those hard times. And so we made that decision, and that was that.
Yeah, I can add to that. I definitely, at that place when I met my love, I was head over heels for God, and I knew that I wanted to honor God in everything that I encountered, everything I did. I mean, married for 16 years. I was four years single. And through that process, I knew that I had a second chance at some point. But what happened to me was I went through a period of I wasn't good enough. I messed up. God doesn't want to use somebody like me because of being divorced. And so I had a lot of mental struggles within myself. I had to redefine who I was. Because I carried a lot of trauma, like emotionally. I was very emotionally damaged. And so I had to kind of like find myself. I would have to, I isolated myself many times and talking to God and just questioning God and blaming myself. And through that period, I said, you know, where's my purpose in this? Like, where am I going to go from here? And so during that process, I had encounters with the Lord, and I said, okay, God, I surrender everything to you. Please remind me who you created me to be. What was my purpose? And God started revealing to me many things, or many times that God used me and working with women. I was a leader in the women's ministry in my dad's church, and God just started reminding me, and the times that he spoke to me. And so when we met, I went through all of that, and I said, okay, well, this time I'm going to make it right, and I'm going to do it the right way. Yeah, you know, handsome and fine and all of that. I started just saying, Lord, you know, however this is going to go, that you're in the center of it, that you are in the center of it. And I was okay for not kissing and hugging and being all of that, because I wanted to honor God through it all. And when I picked up his vibe and like, okay, well, you know, he has these strict guidelines, I said, okay, I can go with it too. Nevertheless, when he first gave me that first kiss, and it was a peck leaving home, I was like, wow, God, okay, I'll receive it. It's just a little thing. But I just thank God that through that process of transition, and finding my husband, and the way God allowed us to line up and find each other, I know it was all God. And one of the things that I love that God revealed to me was his heart. And I remember us talking over the phone, and the moment that he shared all his life story and he was so transparent. I was feeling the Lord over the phone in such a way that my tears started just rolling down my face, and I was feeling his heart. God was allowing me to feel his heart. And I had told him, I said, I've never experienced this in my life. And God allowed me to feel his pain, his trauma to a certain extent. And I'm like, whoa, like, and to a point that he even said, like, I have never spoken about this to anyone at that time, or with a woman or whatever it was. But just like even in that moment, I knew God was in it. And that was what, like the first week after.
Yeah. So we start. Yes. So again, very intentional.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
there was for me, I did not entertain relationships. I'm
Same.
not dating just to date. It's very intentional. I'm looking for a wife. And so I shared, the Lord led me to share, to be very vulnerable with her, and how she responded was my confirmation that she would be the one, even though I hadn't told her that, but that's what. And so we started that reading that book together called Kingdom Relationships.
Yes. And then through that, I understood, because I knew I had a serving heart for children, for moms, for women. And all I did was serve during my lifetime, And so when I felt his heart and what his passion was, I said, this couldn't have been a better connection for me. And through the process of becoming, I was like, man, God, we're going to be like a bomb.com in your kingdom, because we love to serve, because we it was just amazing, like this journey. And I just thank God that God definitely identified that very, very early on, because I knew that God had to do that because of what where we're at today, and what we have, and what we're carrying for God,
Yeah.
And you courted for how long?
So I didn't see, so we started talking via social media.
In July.
Even though we were at the same church, I never saw her. In July of 2018, 19. And then, not 2019.
2019, I was just going to say.
July of 2019. And then I saw
Okay.
So I saw her for the first time in November of 2019. And then the following year, 2020, on her 40th birthday, is where I proposed. And then the following year in March is when we got married. Yeah.
So within.
Okay, so it wasn't too long of a courting period. So not too long of these
Right.
strictly.
No, so we started. So we started. We actually officially started dating in April of 2020. Yeah.
You can say the beginning of 2020.
Because that's when I was like, okay, now we're dating.
Yeah, I think it was April of 2020.
It
was April of 2020.
Because I remember I went, because I was still between both countries, like between New Zealand and America. And so I was flying back to New Zealand every 6 to 8 weeks. And I'll never forget when COVID hit, I was actually out of the country. I was in New Zealand, and I had 24 hours to get out of the country, or else I would have to stay. And I remember saying, I got to go back, because I found my wife. So I got to go back. And during that phase of COVID, that's when we bonded a lot. So we would meet every Friday during while COVID was going down.
Yeah, once a week.
It's interesting. I shared a similar story, because my husband and I met. We met in November of 2018. And then we started dating in February of 2019. And then that entire year, we courted. And then we got married in 2020. So we also had the pandemic experience, getting married during that time. But the courting during that time was it was great for us.
Yes.
It was great for us. Of course, I didn't live I didn't live locally. I lived in Florida, and he was in Illinois. And so flying was still happening, but because of the pandemic, the flights were empty.
Yeah.
And so he would still fly back and forth to see me, and tickets were dirt cheap, but it was just our time to just focus on the building of our relationship. And I know when you say it was good, that it was during that time you get, you learn so much about each other. And also you learn about each other in a time
Everything.
where you couldn't go
No
anywhere.
distractions.
You couldn't do
Yes.
anything.
Yeah.
Exactly. So now you get to see if you really like
Right.
each other, and do you like each other's company, and can I do this for, for a long time and for forever. So it's beautiful. It's such a beautiful story. I'm a sucker for love. I'm a big romantic. So I love to hear how people meet and, how the dating period goes, and then to marriage. But both of you, and I want to talk about this because both of you talk about trauma from your previous relationship and also from the divorce process. And you talk about that trauma being something that you had to work through when it was there. And both of you can answer this, but would you say that by the time you met each other and decided to get together, was your personal trauma all together healed? And did it affect in the early stages of your marriage, or even now, do you see some of your trauma playing out in how you show up in this relationship with each other, whether it's trust issues, whether it's imposter syndrome with your own self? Am I still worthy to have someone like this? How is it?
Yeah, so I mentioned that I went through divorce care class, which is probably not normal for a guy to do, but I was really traumatized from that breakup. Not so much of what my ex did, although I felt that there were some things that were done that were not good. I think more so around me as who God called me to be, and my leadership, like all of it. Like I felt like I went through an entire, it's almost like a death, right? And so
that's exactly how my dad describes divorce. It is death. Therefore, grief and loss is very, very much associated with it.
Absolutely. So I went through all the phases of grief, right? And so, and I did that while I was not in my own country where I had my family to support me or anything like that. I was really off on my own. And so God carried me through that. So I went through a process of healing. So I didn't date again until I think it was 7 years after that divorce was over. This is where I launched myself into building stuff. And that's why I built the End Zone Project. I built Scan One. I built like these amazing networks that God gave me. But you go through all of that and you don't test it until you're actually in a relationship. And so to answer your question is that through the courting phase, I would say I didn't see anything show up, but definitely once I was married, there are some times I'm like, oh, okay, that was a trigger for me. And so you learn these, like you start learning all over again. And I'm like, we have these conversations that was a trigger. And this is why that was a trigger. Yes. And then we do talk about both of our triggers. Like if I say something or do something that's a trigger for her, she'll be like, and I'll be like, yeah, that was a trigger for you. And then this, yep, that was a trigger for me. And so I would say that we're easily able to identify them. And because of how we built our foundation, we're able to sit and have those conversations and overcome some of those challenges. Now, it doesn't mean that immediately you're just like, okay, that was a trigger. I'm not going to get tricked like that again. Every now and again, they may creep up again. So, yeah.
And I can agree. I think that through the process of mourning, right, and going through all of that, identifying what things I had to let go of, and redefining all of my likes and don't likes and things like that. And so when we got married, I love how you said that we there was some triggers, and I'm like, whoa, okay, now I'm going to go about this different because it was a trigger. And although I was healed, but it was something that we had to talk it through to understand each other, that yes, that was a trigger. So let's go about it a little different. Not necessarily saying that we weren't healed from the trauma, but just identifying those little things that now we're in this marriage, and we don't want to resurface things that we had in an old marriage, right? Like we want to do things differently and go about things differently. And so one thing that I love, that when we had those little moments of disagreement or triggers, that we were able to identify and talk through it, through that, and and things gotten even better with that, and I don't think that we've triggered each other in those same ways, because we know what the outcome could be.
So to someone listening, because what I hear, and I think it's really good, what I hear is healed trauma, if you will, doesn't necessarily mean
no incident.
that no incident. It means that now your response to, for instance, it doesn't mean that there's no trigger. However, your response to that trigger shows up differently. Because I hear that the triggers are, and people use this trigger word very loosely, but it also is a very, it's a very real word, it's a very real thing. But for you guys to be able to identify what is it that triggers you, especially from your previous relationship, and then come together and say, and first of all, acknowledge it, identify it, and then communicate. So I hear that communicate has to be one of the big components. And I'm going through all this because I want the man and the woman that's listening that's also been through a divorce, and they're wondering, can I do this again? I will never do this again. I don't ever want to go through it, because they feel like I will never be healed, and I just don't want to stress out anybody and have anyone further stress me out. But here you are, I have two beautiful people who have been married for long periods of time. 16 years is a long time, Bethsaida, to still have a relationship end and then still find someone who you can say, I tried it this way before, it didn't work, I want to try it differently. And then have a spouse in you, Pastor T, where they can say that, communicate that, and then you're supportive and welcoming enough to say, you're right, how can we do this differently? Let's not do the same thing we used to do before, because we want a completely different outcome.
Absolutely.
I think that's key. Go ahead.
So I have a scar right here on my, guys, you can see that little scar there. So that scar came from me when I was younger, a teenager, punched through a glass window, right? And that day, meat was hanging out my bone, everything, right? But I'm now in my adulthood. The scar is still there, but it don't hurt. I can tap it, and I don't feel anything. I think that's how the process of divorce happens, right? There are moments early on where this is quite sensitive. You have to protect it. You have to guard it. You don't want to you don't want to get infected. And so you go through a process of healing. Once you've gone through that healing process, and you could afford to have conversations that are difficult, that used to hurt you, and that you perhaps had some trauma from. However, now, because the Bible says that perfect love casts out all fear. And so because you're loving someone in a different way, and that love perfect under the unction of how God created it, that is a total different experience. And so you don't trigger the same way. You don't flinch, is what I call it. So the capacity of your heart, when you're carrying all that stuff, it is like you got all of this emotional damage, trauma in your heart, and you don't have the capacity to love someone else. And so oftentimes we went through a period where we were single. And so during that single period, I think God, when you surrender to God, he does allow there to be a transferring of him taking all that crap out of you and replacing it with his love. But if you try to move too quick and try to fill the void of having someone, and to have that validation that you could have somebody if you want somebody, you are just making it worse for yourself. And that next relationship is going to definitely have a repeat. I know people who've been married 3 and 4 times now, and they're just from one to the other. They have enough conviction to say that I want to do this the right way. I want to be married. I don't want to be, just have somebody in my bed, but I want to be married. But you don't do the work ahead of time so that marriage is sustainable, so that you can have it for a lifetime until death do you part.
So someone like me, for instance, I just had a thought, because both of you said you want to do it the right way this time. As though, and correct me, you say it as though the first time it wasn't done the right way. But there are some of us, like myself, who recently married. I'm going on 5 years. And I said in my only marriage, my first ever marriage, I want to do it right the first time, because divorce is not an option. How does what you're saying now land for someone who is saying, no, I want to do it right the first time? But then you're saying, I want to do it right with someone the second time, and I'm sure it doesn't mean that you didn't do it right the first time, or maybe you did, or maybe you didn't, for whatever that right means. But if someone is listening and they're like, but I want to do it right the first time, how do I do it right the first time and not have to divorce to then now figure out, oh, this is the right way? Hey, purpose seekers. If this conversation has you thinking about your purpose, what it is, how to find it, and how to truly live it, then I have something just for you. Introducing the Purpose Finder Formula. And you have the free access to my 20-minute training designed to help you uncover your purpose and to start living it with confidence. No fluff, no guesswork. It's clear, practical, step-by-step guide to finding meaning and gaining clarity and direction. Your purpose is calling. Are you ready to answer? Head over to www.charisamunroe.com/Purpose Finder Formula. Enter your info and I'll send it straight to your inbox. Imagine waking up every day knowing your life has meaning, impact, and joy. That's what awaits you. So don't wait. Grab your free training today. Now, let's get back to the episode.
Definitely. So I definitely thought I did. I definitely thought I did it right the first time, and I'm sure my love too.
Yeah, you go in marriage saying, we're going to do the right thing. We're going to go through the way that we're supposed to, the things that we're supposed to do right, and through the process of years, all that. So when I got married, I was married at 22 years old. So I was really young when I got married the first time, but necessarily saying that we didn't do it right the first time. I think towards the end of that marriage, there is a lot of things that looking now, I probably could have done differently. But even then I was like, I tried this, I tried that. It didn't work in that moment, in that season, in that marriage, that now I'm like, I learned from that and I'm not going to do it that way. Does that make sense? Almost like, like I said, like it wasn't that we did it wrong, but that just through the years, things were not fixed, even if you tried. And so now I'm like, okay, but does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I would say that you don't know what you don't know, right? And so I think that any time that you enter a covenant without knowing what you don't know and prematurely, I think you're always going to have challenges. One thing I would say for someone who is saying, I want to get married and I never want a divorce, both of you should be at a level of maturity that you both know what you've been created for, right? What your purpose in life is. If you find that purpose, or one of you find that purpose before the other, and you enter into a marriage, the purpose that you found will always be the mistress to that relationship. And the person, and then if you're...
Hold on, Pastor T, because you're using words, but then you're making sense with the words. So when you have found your purpose and you get married or have been married, purpose will be the mistress.
Absolutely.
To that relationship. Now, you got to clean it up. You got to give us something because mistress is usually something associated with negative.
Exactly. Right. And so when you have purpose and you understand what that purpose is, you understand why God created you, you understand what you're supposed to fulfill on the earth, and you enter into a marriage with a person who has not discovered that yet. And your attention is driven by that purpose in which you've already identified, right? So you're pursuing that purpose. Your partner, whether it's the husband or the wife, are going to become extremely jealous of you pursuing that. Now, here's the other part of this.
So good.
If your partner, your husband or your wife, finds their purpose, and now you have yours, right? And those two things don't come together for kingdom purpose, now there is a divide. She's pursuing hers, you're pursuing yours, and there's no coming together. when that happens, it cannot stand.
Yes.
A house divided cannot stand. And so if you
There it is. There it is.
that purpose while you're dating or in a courting period, then you know, like what we were able to do. I couldn't do that the first time.
Yeah.
First of all, I wasn't mature enough to understand. I was zealous. I loved God and was pursuing what I knew was my purpose. But I couldn't lead a woman in that because I was still learning.
Yes.
And so, of course, she felt like that's the threat. So let me get rid of the threat. So she becomes the assassin to the very thing that I was created for.
So good. Same.
And so that creates, honestly, so much conflict and so much confusion that the very reason you were getting together because you love that person, suddenly that person becomes someone that you hate because you continue, instead of dreaming with them, you're having nightmares.
So this is why
Yes. Oh, wow. That's good.
when you find and connect yourself with your forever person, why it is so important that person, and I don't want to say that person aligns with your purpose, because my next question is, what if you are young? What if you get married young? You haven't really discovered your why, but you found your person, and you found your forever person who you feel you can align with. Maybe they're your high school sweetheart, and years can go by and you can still be together. What if you do find the spouse before purpose?
There are some that do. Let me tell you, 1 in a million, right? They're 1 in a million of those who find in high school, and they're like, we have friends right now who were together since high school, right? And they're great together, right? There's 1 in a million. Sometimes you can accidentally find that one in a lifetime person, your life partner. You can actually by accident, right? But that's not the average. That's not the average. So as you go into adulthood, and then when you're younger, this is the other thing. When you're younger, you're more flexible, so you can grow together. But when you become an adult and you kind of have had some life experiences, you've already predetermined the kind of life you want to live, what you're going to put up with and what you're not going to put up with, right? Based off of what you feel you deserve in this life. And so you take those same standards and expectations and you place them on the other person, whether it's a woman or if you're a husband, right? You put them on them without ever discovering what is their God-given purpose for this life, and how could I be a part of that and in covenant with her or him to achieve that, right? And not be intimidated by it, or not putting roadblocks in the way for them not to reach that. Because at the end of the day, if we're together to death do us part, then I'm a part of the equation no matter what. And not just a part of the equation, I'm the foundation, because in marriage, if one or the other is not supporting the purpose, the vision, then it's not stable. And so it's going to ultimately fall.
Absolutely.
Whether it's finances
so we're either
go ahead, sorry. I was just going to say, whether it's the finances or whether it's anything else in the relationship.
So were either of you a little leery on, because now by the time you guys find each other, you're not 22 anymore. You're 40 plus. And so you've lived life, you've gone through some experiences, you have by this time truly discovered what you are supposed to do when you're walking in that purpose. How leery were the two of you, and this may be different for either of you, in finding someone that's going to I'm going to use the word fit and align, that would fit into your life of purpose, into your journey of purpose, that would align with what you do, that purpose wouldn't be a mistress, but it would actually be a helpmeet, if you will.
Yes, that's a good question.
Were you leery? Were you a little, like Pastor T, for instance, were you like, oh man, I need someone who won't see purpose as my mistress? I
would probably be the first one who had, and that's why I say I was intentional from the onskirt, like from the start. I was very intentional because not only was it, I'd experienced it, I knew that I had to give up a decade of my kingdom because I made the wrong choice. And that cost me something. And so when we got together and going through that process, I already knew that the steps that I was going to be taking, right? And how she aligned with that, and rightfully for her too, because she had already put her things in place as well. So it wasn't just me driving this. Right. But what I will say is that going through that process of reading a book together, I had never done that before. Like we're literally every week reading this book. Over the phone, and we're talking through the chapters, and we're working through scenarios and situations. We put the work in so that we knew that that we were each other's person. Right. I didn't do that before. Like I didn't even know to do that before. Right. Yeah. I think that as we grew, and I know for me, as I grew older, I was like, man, it's a lot for a woman to put up with a Terrance Wallace. Let me tell you, my schedule is crazy. And then I got all these kids who are not my biological kids that I want you to come in and mother and be a part of another mother to them because they have their biological mothers. And then I want you to be friends with their mothers, right? And so to build community. But this is how God is. Like, I didn't think I would, to be quite honest, I did not think I would find someone. I had said in my mind, after getting divorced before that, I'm never getting married again. Like, I'm not going through this again. Like, this is like, I don't care, Lord. I'm probably one of the ones in the Bible. Like, not miss me on all of that. Like, I'm good. But because I knew God's purpose for my life, in order for me to be an example and to break the cycles of not just poverty in the lives of my boys, but for them to see family, that I needed a wife.
She was important.
It's like she was important. And so I couldn't be so stubborn in my own, like, oh, I don't want to hurt. I don't hurt no more. I don't want to conform no more. No, I know. Like,
so it had very little to do with.
Say that again.
It had very little to do with
exactly. This is what God wanted. This is what He ordained. And so if God called me to create what's called the End Zone Project, and for these kids to see something different, then I had to own it as a son of God to say, you know what? This is the right woman. This is the one. Like, for her to say, so during our courting period when we were reading the book, she talked about how she would minister to women and her love for kids and how she's ministered to kids with disabilities. This was already starting to come together like this because that was the missing piece. That was the missing piece. Absolutely. And I think that seeing that early on and laying that foundation was like, okay, this could work. It had nothing to do with, because before I was saying, I want a woman. She got to be established in her career, doing blah, 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 doing all this kind of stuff. And then I was like, wait a minute. Like, what is that going to do? Yeah. Does she carry the anointing and the mantle to help form this family the way God wants it to be? Amen. And that was clear answer.
Amen. For me to answer your question, although when we got together, the Lord was confirming, like I was feeling the Lord and God ministering to me in my secret place, with the connection. And when we read this book, it was also for me of what you want, God, for me. Who do you want in my life? It's about you, God. It's not about what I need, what I want. Although God knows our deepest desires and what we would love to have. But at the end of the day, when I would go before the throne, I would tell the Lord, I said, Lord, I need him to love you like, I don't know, like just this love, this unimaginable love for you. And that was my whole thing. I remember hearing his testimony, and before we met, he was on Instagram and he would just speak about his testimony and just bring encouraging words. And I was like, wow, God, like, this man of God, like this is amazing and things like that. And so when we read the book and we started identifying who we were and what our desires and what our even expectations, right, at some point, but finding that purpose, and we're like, I was telling God, I was like, God just couldn't have been better. Clearly, God had aligned us through the transition of my life and what I went through and what he went through. It's almost like it's all you, God. It's not what I want. It's what you want us to do for your kingdom. And many times women would come up to me and like, oh my goodness, how, you didn't see that he had all these kids. You didn't see that you're going to share time with not only with your daughter, but now you have 10 other boys. And I said, you know what? I didn't see all that. Like, it was greater than that. It was beyond that. It was beyond.
You probably would have went the other way.
I would have went the other way if I had different eyes and if my purpose and just my focus was off. I definitely probably would have walked the other way. But I know that God was allowing me to see what he was seeing, what God was seeing, and I just gave God glory because through the process, he just kind of pinpointing everything that I was asking God for in detail. God kept answering me, even when he didn't know that, having our conversations over the phone on Fridays. It's like, okay, God, like this is bigger than us. This is you. It's for your kingdom.
Y'all only talked on Friday?
Yes. No. We talked every day, but
we talked every day. Both would be on, so we would see each other in person on Fridays.
Yes, Friday was the only day we see each other.
Oh, I was about to say, man, these rules are getting
we talked every day and until the wee hours of the night.
Yes.
Because she worked 2 jobs.
I had 2 jobs done, and in between my jobs we would talk, but Friday would be the day.
But Friday was that purposeful day. Friday was, I love it. Okay. Oh, this is so great. Oh my goodness. It's almost as though you guys led with purpose. And as you led with purpose, the rewards and the benefits are even greater than if you led with your eyes first, or if you led with your body first, or if you led with the superficial stuff. Like, we're in a world where people, their number one thing is he gotta be, or she has to be appeasing to the eyes first. I mean, yes, God, I understand purpose and all that, but she at least gotta look. She got to be easy on the eyes. And then if she isn't, it's like, I can't do it, even though she may be the perfect fit, but there was no, I don't hear the superficial. I just so happen that you guys are both beautiful inside and out. But leading with purpose is almost like your reward and your benefits are so much greater than if you led otherwise. And I don't think there are a lot of people, like you say, Pastor T, the number is very slim, who lead that way. And even for my husband and I, that's how we had to lead. Now, would I want to be married 22, 24, 25? When my mom got married, absolutely. But I was in my late 30s when I met my husband and when I got married. So by that time, I was more mature, had gone through some things in life. So I knew what I didn't want in a relationship. I knew what I didn't want in a man. And I also was already at the time walking in my purpose very strongly. I knew the calling that was on my life. I didn't know the full measure of it, but I knew the calling that was on my life. And so I also knew that the person I would marry, that I would connect myself with to forever, I knew that they had to fit. I knew that they had to align in some way. And for my husband and I, it was those conversations that he and I would have, like you say. It's those conversations on the phone. It's things that he would say. It's questions I would ask or not ask. And he just needed to say 1 or 2 or 3 things, kingdom aligned. And I said, okay, maybe I can give him a try. Maybe I could give him a try. But it just turns out that is so important. So important. Because many times, I love how you put, I think I'm going to title this particular episode, The Mistress of Purpose. Because, I love it, love it, love it. Now, Pastor T, you spoke about having to find someone who would pretty much, in a nutshell, make your house a home. And she would fit, and she would be the perfect fit and be able to do that. She would be able to understand what your purpose is, and she would be able to fit in so nicely that she can lead the home of all of these boys just like you, and also allow you to lead, be able to support you as you lead as a father. That's where you are now. However, you didn't grow up with a father. And I think it is important for us to touch on that, because here you are being the father to almost 250 children, because you have New Zealand and you have here in Chicago, and you are truly being a father to these children. You're being a help and support to the mothers, but you didn't have that. Where did the connect occur? Because how did you then eventually, along your journey, even know what a father should look like, what a father should be, what a father should sound like? How did that affect you? Was it traumatizing not growing up with a father? Like, how do you now be a great father to even kids that aren't yours and not having your own?
So how I learned, I mean, for me, it was truly God, because I did not grow up having a father. One of my probably my deepest desires growing up was to have my father present in my life, and that didn't happen. And so I did have mentors. I had spiritual, what people I would call spiritual fathers, who were part of my life. And so while they were able to have some input into my life at a certain extent, um, growing up with a two parent household was not something that I was accustomed to or had experienced. And so for me, creating that environment for young men and young ladies who did not have that became sort of my life's journey, right? You know, I felt like God began to show me ways of how do you do this, and how do you do it well. And so across our country, in and out of the country, actually around the world, you have a single parent households. In most cases, it's the woman that's carrying the burden of parenting kids and providing for them. And I just thought that, man, there's no way, based on what I saw and witnessed my mom do to raise me. I said, there's just no way a woman can do this for multiple kids and be successful. Now, there are some single moms who have been very successful in raising their boys and even their girls. However, it is a very, it's like rolling dice, right? You know, sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong. And so for me, really getting that blueprint downloaded from heaven, that this is the way it should look. And so it wasn't until like when, I'll never forget this. So when I started dating my love, I didn't expose her to my boys, you know, quickly. And so they knew something was going on because they saw a different rhythm in how I showed up. And you know, at the dinner table, we used to have these table conversations where they can talk about anything. And most of the time they only wanted to talk about girls, right? Who they're dating and who they're interested in. And I just let them be as explicit as they wanted to be, because I wanted them to have freedom at our table. And so finally, I'll never forget it. Two of the boys started dating these twins. And I was like, oh, let's see how it looks. I want to meet her. I want to meet their parents, and you know, I want them to come over. And so we started this whole process. And finally, they was like, well, you've been dating someone too. We've been hearing you up on the phone. You're talking to somebody late at night. And so finally the day came for her to meet them. We had dinner together. And then she left, and then they gave me their feedback as to if she's the one or not. And so they gave me
How did that
it was
go?
very interesting. All of them were on board with it. And there was probably one who is my Law and Order. He was like, let's just see a little longer. Let's just see. Maybe we need to meet her again. And maybe she needs to bring her daughter over too. And so, right. Ultimate. But to answer your question, I did not see it modeled. But it was something that was embedded in me, I believe, from God, that this is what it needs to look like. And so not only having making the full family unit whole, but also you know, how to support her, showing the boys how to support. I never forget, Keandre was dating. All the boys, when they started dating, I told them for Valentine's Day, or they're going on date, like their birthdays, get them flowers and all this. And they was like, I'm not getting all the flowers. I'm not doing this. I'm not like, So they wasn't about that life. And then suddenly I started dating. I started showing them like what to do. And then all of a sudden, they're out buying flowers for their girls. They're going shopping. Like, where do you go get the flowers? Okay, come go with me. Let me show you how to do this. And then they started doing that. And so it was in those moments that I started seeing, like, this is what's meant to be passed down. We see generational legacy as something sometimes just materialistic in money. But these are generational legacies that's being passed down, where we created family traditions that now the boys hold true, that these are some of the traditions that they would like to see in their own families. And so in their wives. Yeah. And so, and then, measuring them, having conversations with her about their girls and what's not working and what they need to do. It all started happening. And I think that that's the beauty of what we get to do. Like, those are the moments that you can't capture in a report, right? You can't, but that's a return on the investment that we sow into the lives of our kids and even our donors, right? So, powerful moments.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's so funny that you say that, because for our Valentine's little dinner, one of our conversations we shared, and we shared a few, but one of the things that I told him was, I love that we're living here and that we can be examples to the boys on what love is, what true love is, and what that looks like within a marriage, within ministry. And I was just taken back and even a little, I got knotted up just thinking about that it was always been more than us. It was God also teaching them through our everyday life what is to be married, what is to be a Christian couple, what is to respect each other. When we have disagreements, we rarely disagree in front of the boys. It's something like, I was making sure that, like, if I'm going to be an example, I also want to let them know that there's always space for when there's a disagreement, so they can learn how to go about even that area, right? So I was taken back during this Valentine's weekend, and we did have that conversation. I was just glad that through it all, we continue living a honorable life before God, but also being examples to the boys, and not only to boys, but my daughter. She's in a relationship right now, and just creating that space to know what it is to honor God, but also, build that boundary for yourself and for your marriage.
I don't know where the time is gone. I have so many things I want to ask you too, because this is amazing. Because I asked, and I'm so glad you shared that, Bethsaida, because I asked Pastor T about fatherhood, and it's almost as though he couldn't talk about fatherhood without talking about husbandry. Right. He couldn't talk about, even though his father wasn't there, but he just believed it was embedded in him. But he still always talked about how important it was for him to show that, what it is to be a husband, what it is to be a good mate, and sometimes we do miss the mark. We do talk about a father needing to be there, but you also didn't have a very good example of a husband growing up either. But here you are doing really well at being a husband. And I will share this as we come to an end. I'll share this one thing. And Bethsaida, this says so much about you, and you wouldn't know this story. So, of course, my husband and I, we volunteer with you guys at InZone. So we volunteer at InZone. Very, very good organization. We love the boys. We love these two leaders. And so we volunteer once a week. And volunteering can be anything. So usually we would come and then we would help with the food. Help prepare the food. We're in the kitchen, get the food ready for the boys in the evening. And we did that for about a year. And so all of a sudden, and my husband is not the one to be in the kitchen, but I would be in the kitchen getting the burgers ready and doing this and doing that. I have full reign in the kitchen. Okay. And one Tuesday, Pastor T says to me, "Oh, we need to ask." By this time, we know that he's dating. We know that he's dating someone. We hadn't really met you yet, and if we did, it was maybe once or twice. So then I asked him something, and all of a sudden he's like, "Well, let's ask my love. Let's ask my love." And I'm like, huh? I'm like, wait, what? But I say that story because not only was it important for him to make sure that you were aligned with the vision, the purpose of the household, the family, but just across the board with everybody. There's now this person who was going to be my wife, whether she was then, not now, soon to be. Nonetheless, not only were the boys, but so were the volunteers, so were the friends. Like everyone knew that she was going to be my wife. Therefore, there was a certain level of respect. There was a certain level of protocol, if you will, that needed to now be set and standard. And it caught me off guard, but I loved it because I saw a man, I saw a father, and I saw a husband setting the precedence of how things are going to go in my household with the children and with anybody else that enters. And so now he was letting me know right away, this ain't my kitchen no more. And this ain't your kitchen no more either. This is
but you still come now and
beautiful. And of course, you mentioned her being friends to the mothers of the boys, but also being friends to the husband and wives of the volunteers. And now, oh my goodness, Bethsaida, you and I are great friends. Like, we have this amazing relationship, and now the kitchen is mine. It's ours again.
Yes, we share it when you come. Yeah, absolutely.
But that is, if that is the way that marriage should be, and sometimes it does take a man like Pastor T, who can lead, to be able to know that I need my wife coming in to be very comfortable. I need her to be respected. I need her to be loved, and it starts with me.
Yeah.
If only men, and my husband is the same way, but if there are other men who listening can follow that same principle, they would have so much greater marriages. And we don't have the time. I need to come and have you guys do a part 2. This was amazing.
Thank you.
So I need each of you, if you can, share some, maybe the best advice that you can give to anyone listening, to all the men and women listening to the sound of your voices. The best advice that you would give them as it pertains to marriage, love, purpose.
Like we've said it so many times here, I think that knowing your purpose before getting married and knowing and having that strong relationship with God to a point where every decision, every thought is aligned with God, I think it's so, so, so important. Putting your feelings and desires, your fleshly desires, your feelings to the side, and allowing God to be the center of that makes a whole lot of difference in making a decision going into marriage and knowing your purpose. God will align you with the person that you need carrying that same purpose. So I think for me, the greatest advice is knowing who you're called to be and having that strong connection for every thought, everything, just align it with God's will over your life.
That's good.
Awesome.
I would say from a marriage standpoint is definitely align your purpose together and to the best of your ability by any means necessary. Do not end up in a situation where your purpose becomes your mistress to your spouse. And then from a purpose standpoint, you can, once you discover what your purpose is, there's no denying it, right? You can't eat, sleep. You are going to constantly be thinking about pursuing that. And no matter what other relationships are doing, keep your eyes on what God is giving you, right? In your own house, in your own relationship, because you can't chase what the Joneses are doing. Right. Trust me, no, everyone's looks good from the outside. What you focus on, and then you'll see your foundation being strengthened, and you'll be able to build something amazing for generations to come through your bloodline. And then from a business standpoint, I just want to say whatever ideas that you have, as a couple or individually, I would just encourage you to pursue them, not chase them, because when you chase it, it runs away from you. So pursue it in a way that will bring both glory to God and glory to your relationship, because financial stability in a relationship, especially a marriage, is so critically important. All right. That's all.
This is good stuff. Do not put yourself in a situation where purpose is perceived as the
That's right.
mistress of the
Okay.
relationship, and pursue your ideas. Thank you both so
You're
very much. I hope you guys walked away with encouragement, motivation, inspiration to go after what's yours, pursue what's yours, and also make a decision that if you are going to try again, if you've maybe been married and you are coming out of a divorce, you've been divorced for a while, and you are now considering trying again, this is what trying again can look like, especially when you put purpose
Absolutely.
first. This is what trying again can look like. This is what going after it again can look like. You don't have to be alone if you don't want to be alone. Heal your trauma,
Yes.
however you need to do that, and then make sure that you become the best version of who God created you to be for somebody else. Terrance and Bethsaida, you guys have been amazing. We will be having you back. I promise you. Let it be
Thank you
known. We will be doing this again. I know that you have been a beacon of light to those listening, and they're able to see light at the end of their tunnel, their very, very dark tunnel. And it's been great. Thank you both very much. So we're going to end on a very high note for me. One of the things I love is food. Food is everything to me. And so I like to end on this note because it's just a kind of a very light note, but it's also a very fun note. So I do want to hear, what are each of yours favorite food and your favorite restaurant?
My favorite food is tacos. I'll eat tacos every day, all day.
Puerto Rican,
Puerto Rican
yes,
food,
there it
of
is.
course, but my go-to is tacos and my Puerto Rican rice. I would say my favorite restaurant at the moment, since we've been married, is Region. We really like that restaurant. It's our go-to restaurant. So
Yes.
She makes a mean Puerto Rican rice, ladies and gentlemen. Mean one.
And my favorite food is soul food. So sweet potatoes, mac and cheese, baked chicken or fried chicken. Don't matter how the chicken is. And then obviously our favorite restaurant is Region. It's in Barrington. It's what.
And he makes a mean candy yam dish. He sure
right
does.
Here.
Yes. Oh, this is wonderful. You said Region?
Region.
Region is the name of the restaurant?
Yes, it's in Barrington.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one of our favorite restaurants.
One of our favorite.
Yes.
I have to make sure hubby and I
we gotta
check it out.
We gotta check it out.
It's like literally 5 minutes from here.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe we go together one day. Y'all been holding out.
We can go. We can go.
We should book a time.
Yeah, the atmosphere is very cozy, very romantic, very nice, and the food is delicious. So
always fresh.
Yeah.
Nice. Love food. Well, people, there you have it. Terrance and Bethsaida Wallace, some amazing people doing great things in the world. We've learned about their journey, their story, and their lessons. And I hope that you can also learn their lessons and apply them to your life today. This is another great episode of the Purpose Finder podcast. I am your host, Charisa Munroe-Wilborn. And until next time, see you soon. Bye. And ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap on this episode of the Purpose Finder podcast. I hope today's conversation lit a fire within you, because purpose isn't just something you chase. It is something you live every single day. If this episode resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps us reach more people on their journey to purpose. Let's continue the journey together. Join the Purpose Finder community on Facebook for exclusive insights, tools, and a tribe of purpose-driven people just like you. And remember, the two most important days in your life are the day you are born and the day you find out why. Your purpose isn't far off. It's already within you. It's time for you to uncover it and live it boldly. Until next time, stay inspired, stay intentional, and keep walking in your purpose.